The word soldier is derived from the Middle English word souder. However, its origins can be traced through several old languages, such as the Old French word for mercenary and the medieval Latin word for one having pay. But all of these actually stem from a single word, a late Latin word used to describe a pure gold coin from the Roman and Byzantine Empire, solidus. And while I'm sure that's not the Solidus that made you click on this video, I do think that knowing the origin of the word helps us understand him a little bit better. Today we're looking at Solidus Snake, the third Snake, the antagonist of Metal Gear Solid 2, and I think an incredibly overlooked character in the series. So let's break down his character, his motivations, and what I think make him so interesting. Solidus Snake was the third clone created in the L'Enfant Terrible project. This was a project by the secret organization known as the Patriots to create successors to the legendary soldier Big Boss. Initially, they created two clones, Solid Snake and Liquid Snake. They were genetically engineered to express Big Boss's recessive and dominant genes respectively. Don't read too much into the dominant and recessive stuff, it really doesn't matter for this video. Anyway, sometime later, a third clone was created, Solidus Snake. Solidus is a perfect clone of Big Boss without any genetic tampering. Going back to his name, there's actually some more cheeky Kojima business going on there than just the soldier parallels. You see, in layman's terms, Solidus is a chemical state where an object is in between being a solid and a liquid. So he's like, in between solid. I don't know, I like it. Oh, also the /, like the one on your keyboard, that's also called a Solidus. It's because they would use that mark on ledgers for 1 shilling, so kind of goes back to the whole coin thing. Anyway, all of the clones have built-in accelerated aging as a failsafe, but Solidus seemed to have it, worse than the other two. I mean, he would be roughly the same age as Snake during Metal Gear Solid 2. That's a pretty hard 37, man. He also looks just like Big Boss, which he loved, even more so once he loses the eye.
They got my eye!
That's kind of unique to Solidus. He seemed to like Big Boss, or at least he didn't mind the comparison.
You're the spitting image of Big Boss.
Is that so?
Unlike Liquid, who hated him, and Snake, who kind of had a complicated relationship with the man. It's kind of funny, as much as he does look like Big Boss in Metal Gear Solid 2, he actually shares a model with Solid Snake. They just added gray hair and some wrinkles. See, look, it blows your mind a little, right? It obviously makes sense they would look alike, but still. Speaking of Snake, here's something weird. Aside from that somewhat famous scene before the Harrier fight,
I'm the boss to surpass Big Boss himself. Solid Snake. No, that is not Solid Snake.
Yeah, that one. Aside from that scene, Solidus and Snake never really interact in this game. Like at all. They don't even really mention each other that much.
I've captured Snake.
I mean, I know Snake isn't the main character of Metal Gear Solid 2, but you'd think that these two would have some kind of things to say each other in the narrative, right? Anyway, it ends up being pretty convenient that he looks older because it's certainly more presidential that way. Oh yeah, Solidus was also the President of the United States, George Sears. In the early 2000s, the Patriots appointed him the 43rd president. He would have been in his late 20s at the time. That's absolutely crazy. For those of you that may not know, the Constitution says you can't serve as the president until you're 35. But given he looks much older, that probably wasn't an issue. He probably just lied about his age. Realistically though, it probably was just a coincidence. It's entirely possible Kojima didn't even know you had to be 35 to be a US president. I'm American and I know people I went to school with who don't even know that. He did seem to take politics seriously despite being a Patriots plant. He named his swords Democrat and Republican, for example. Not exactly subtle. By the way, we gotta talk about the swords. Like, what a wild swing that must have been. They were probably like, yeah, you're a clone of Big Boss. He has nothing to do with katanas or any weeb shit like that. And Solidus was like, okay, yeah, I hear ya. Let me grab a couple swords right quick. By the way, you know where I can get some tentacles? But I guess it worked out. The dude aura farmed like crazy.
Brace yourself.
Anyway, he was president during Shadow Moses, the events of Metal Gear Solid, and he actually pulled the strings on the whole thing in secret. Ocelot even speaks with him at the end of that game, revealing the first of many double, triple, and quadruple crosses he'll go on to become famous for in the series. Honestly though, Solidus did pick a great right-hand man in Ocelot. It's just he was playing a much longer game than he was. The Patriots didn't like Solidus getting involved in Shadow Moses and, you know, the whole trying to overthrow them thing, and so they removed him from office.
Damn the Patriots!
Publicly, George Sears resigned though, meaning that technically he would only be the second president to resign, after Nixon of course. So wait, Solidus opposes the Patriots? So do Raiden and Snake. But that means Solidus is a good guy, right? Right? Well, not really. But like with most Metal Gear characters, that's not exactly an easy question to answer. But let's try. But first, if you're enjoying this video, please give it a like and be sure to follow me to stick around. I'm still sponsor free and putting these videos together on my own, so any bit helps. And if you really want to support me, consider joining my Patreon or a YouTube membership. The details on that are all below. Anyway, back to the video. Let's talk about what Solidus wants. Solidus, at the end of the day, wants freedom from tyranny. He idolizes men like his namesake George Washington. In fact, the very last thing he does in life is reach out for him. And it's not just his first name either. His last name, Sears, is in reference to Isaac Sears. This was a man who was a leader of the Sons of Liberty in New York City during the American Revolution.
He said it! He said it!
Yes, the Sons of Liberty is also what Solidus called his little terrorist coup during the Big Shell in Metal Gear Solid 2. That's of course no coincidence. Revolutionaries like Washington and Sears were willing to fight, kill, and die for their freedom. In his mind, Solidus is following in the footsteps of these men he idolized.
It's not power I want. What I wanted to take back from the Patriots are things like freedom, civil rights, opportunities. The founding principles of this country.
Because see, that's the thing. Solidus views himself as the man who is going to free his country from the villainy and oppression of the Patriots. In doing so, he will achieve what is his ultimate goal.
Do you know what day it is today?
April 30th?
To be remembered. To be deified like the founding fathers and go down in history with a lasting legacy.
Unlike an intron of history, I will be remembered as an exon. That will be my legacy, my mark in history.
And Solidus has some interesting views on legacy, and they tie into the game's theme. Remember how Metal Gear Solid had the theme of Gene? Well, Metal Gear Solid 2 has the theme of... meme. Yeah, Kojima was ahead of his time here. He was referring to the original idea of memes. Ideas or behaviors that are passed down culturally through imitation. In fact, the name meme actually comes from the ancient Greek word for imitate or mime. Yeah, it actually pairs well with Metal Gear Solid 1's theme. I'm not gonna go too deep into the theme of meme today, just kinda how it motivates Solidus. I'll really need a whole video on its own to fully dive into Metal Gear Solid 2's themes. So what did securing a legacy mean to Solidus? Well, we have to go back in time a little bit to start explaining that. So let's head to neon-soaked late 80s New York City and then immediately smash cut to the Civil War-torn West African country of Liberia. Here, Solidus Snake led a small boy unit known as the Army of the Devil. The captain of these little rascals was Jack. They called him Jack the Ripper, sometimes White Devil. I don't know, this part's weird. Anyway, the kid is Raiden, the protagonist of Metal Gear Solid 2. Solidus more or less adopted Jack after, well...
By the way, Jack, I was the one who killed your parents.
Kind of as an experiment? Or something? No one really talks about this too much, but also Solidus would have been like in his late teens at this point, only a few years older than Raiden. Imagine adopting a 10-year-old at like 17. Although Solidus probably presented like he was in his 20s, you know, the advanced aging and whatnot. Anyway, after the war, Jack disappears. Spoiler alert, the Patriots did it, and so Solidus kind of just moves on with his life. But he did seem to genuinely have some affection for Raiden. In their final confrontation, Solidus realizes he has to kill Raiden to achieve his goal of locating and destroying the Patriots. But he doesn't exactly revel in it. Raiden is just between him and his goal, so he's gotta go down. He even turns it into one last experiment and one more test of both of their legacies. You see, Raiden is a part of Solidus' legacy. All three of the clones are sterile by design. They can't have children of their own. This means that anything Solidus has, genetically, ends with him. But, at least in Solidus' mind, his ideals and his legacy can live on through Raiden, mimetically. This is ultimately why Solidus is at war with the Patriots. They seek to filter information and decide what gets passed along. To Solidus, this is the ultimate form of oppression. To him, the ability to pass on his legacy and freedom are the exact same thing.
I will triumph over the Patriots. and liberate us all. And we will become the Sons of Liberty!
He said it! He said it!
Solidus can't pass on his genes, so instead he has to pass on his memes. And I mean, it worked to some extent. Raiden instantly sees a sword and turns into Miyamoto Musashi, so clearly he got that idea from somewhere. I mean, really, we have to talk about it. It's crazy that Metal Gear Solid 2, a stealth video game, ends in a goddamn sword fight, with the best boss theme in the entire series banging out the entire time. It's so cool. Metal Gear Solid 2 is so cool. So yeah, all of that is what Solidus is fighting for, and he's willing to do whatever it takes to succeed, including, you know, nuking New York City. Oh wait, sorry. It wasn't a nuke, it was a,
The purified hydrogen bomb.
Purified hydrogen bomb?
Yeah, one of those. So, no, I wouldn't say that the guy who orphaned a child soldier, planned to send a major city into the Dark Ages, and orchestrated global terrorist conspiracies is a good guy. But he's compelling because he never thought he was the good guy. He believed in his cause deeply and would fight, kill, and ultimately die for it. To him, this was another revolution, and he was just another George fighting against tyranny using any tool he had. He was willing to pay any price for freedom, not just his own, but everyone's. He saw censorship and control as the ultimate enemy, and believed legacy was the only true immortality. And in my opinion, it's kind of hard to argue that he didn't have a heavy hand in pointing Snake, Raiden, and Otacon in the right direction towards ultimately defeating the Patriots for good.
Everything that Solidus feared 5 years ago, it's all come to pass. The Patriots are trying to protect their power, their own interests, by controlling the digital flow of information.
So, maybe his memes did live on.